I've been a sports writer my entire adult life, and if I'm fortunate to live to be 107 years old like this story's main character, there is one particular day that I'll never forget. It was a chilly spring day 10 years ago when Dr. John Risher strolled into my newspaper office to talk sports. Doc, the oldest living Cavalier football player, was only 97 then. I say only because he lived until 107 before sadly passing away this week in Lynchburg. Risher had invited to give me a personal tour of what remained of Lambeth Field, where Virginia played football before Scott Stadium came around in 1931. Doc had been a member of the UVA football team in both venues. I somewhat reluctantly jumped into Doc's car, feeling a little anxious about riding with the 97-year-old who described himself as being deaf as a post. Weaving in and out of traffic down 29 toward UVA, we pulled off into neighborhoods that inspired Doc to belt out a few verses of From Rugby Road to Vinegar Hill. "We're gonna get drunk tonight." Clearly, Doc was not feeling his age. We walked down through Lambeth's seating and onto the field. My guide pointed out significant memories, including the spot where U.S. President Calvin Coolidge and his wife, Grace, sat for Virginia's Thanksgiving Day victory over arch-rival North Carolina on November 29, 1928. Quite a day, an everlasting memory watching him show off his drop-kick skills with a ball that more resembled a pumpkin than a football. Through the years, I wrote several pieces about Doc. Every managing editor who came through our doors insisted on a new piece about the ageless wonder, a fascinating story. Mostly though, I shared pre-game meals at Scott Stadium and John Paul Jones Arena with the centenarian. Last year, he brought me a bunch of golf balls, vintage 1970s, still in their original boxes. "I don't need these anymore," Doc said. "I haven't played since my 100th birthday." He said he shot his age when he was 90, but after that he just tried to shoot his weight. "I had to give it up because I had cataracts and couldn't see where the ball went," Risher laughed. "When I got the cataracts removed, I could see where the ball went, but I'd forget where it went." He was just joshing, of course. The man's memory was sharp. He could remember plays from a game against Roanoke College in Scott Stadium's opening season of 1931. "I haven't opened that box of balls. I don't think I will for two reasons. One, the balls are so old that I fear they might explode upon impact. Two, a constant reminder that you're only as old as you act." John Risher didn't act his age. When he was born in 1910, the average life expectancy for men was 47 years. Only 14% of American homes had a bathtub, and only 8% had a telephone. There were only 8,000 cars in the entire United States, and a mere 144 miles of paved road. The speed limit in most cities was 10 miles per hour. Mother's Day and Father's Day had not yet been created. The average U.S. worker made between $200 and $400 per year. Risher grew up in Charlottesville, and even though he couldn't afford the 25-cent admission fee to UVA football games, he discovered he could look out an upstairs window at his mother's boarding house with a good view of Lambeth Field. He was hooked. He loved Wahoo's football, became a player, although he claims he wasn't that big a deal. He became one of the UVA football program's statisticians in the 1960s with his late friend Paul Wiseman, and missed only 4 games between then and this season. When Doc didn't show up for the opener against William and Mary, we knew things were serious. While he had a serious side, he had a quick wit, a good bedside manner being a physician, and never wasted a good opportunity to deliver a line with the timing of a top-drawer comedian. The last time I interviewed him, in October of 2015, he was patiently waiting in the Daily Progress parking lot on a Saturday morning. I wasn't on time, but as I approached his car, he was deep into an impressively thick book. "What you readin', Doc?" I said. "That's a big book." His response was classic Risher. "Comes in handy in doctors' waiting rooms, and while I'm waiting on sports writers who show up late," he said in cornpone fashion. It was about that time that more publicity came Doc's way than he relished. Everyone wanted to talk to a living legend, something he guffawed with each request. The New York Times did a story. So did the ACC network and ESPN for one of its game day features. Duck was always kidding about how hard it was to get a date at his age, but this time it backfired on him. A female viewer in Pennsylvania took note and tracked down Risher's phone number. She called him and said she'd come down for a date because she'd never been with a man his age. For once, Duck was somewhat speechless. His retort: "I'm sorry, honey. I don't think there's much I can do for you." One of my friends, Stan White, who grew up in Lynchburg and was a patient of Risher's as a youngster, later moved to Mississippi, drove home to Lynchburg as an adult, wasn't feeling well, and got an appointment with Doc. Stan told the nurse how far he had driven, and the nurse relayed the message to Doc, who sent the nurse back to the waiting room with this response: "Tell him if he drove all the way from Mississippi to see me, he needs a psychiatrist, not a doctor." That was Doc. A wonderful, witty, loving human being who loved his wahoos. He would drive up for football, basketball, baseball and lacrosse, and always had the best seat in the house. He told me once, "One of these days a clot is going to bust loose, and I'll join my relatives. I hope to see the football program turned around before then." I can envision Doc somewhere singing that Rugby Road song, annoying his relatives. Perhaps he can lend some heavenly assistance to Bronco Mendenhall on the other matter.